Hello and welcome to the Phoenix Rising podcast. I am Ashley Drummond. I am your host. If this is your first time here, welcome. This podcast is a show that is dedicated to really providing you with the tools around holistic nutrition, mindset, meditation, all kinds of life coaching type stuff to really inspire and empower you to be your best self. And I don't mean that in like the cheesy cliche social media hashtag be your best self kind of way. I mean like the real deal. So on this podcast, we get deep. We talk about the stuff that really matters, that's going to make an impact and a difference in your life and your happiness and overall well-being. So welcome. I am so glad that you are here. Let me mess around a little bit with the audio setting on this to make sure. I got a little notification that was saying that it might not be recording, but apparently I think it is. Okay. Sorry about that. For a second there, it just kind of switched on me. So I wanted to make sure. But yeah, so welcome. If you're watching this on YouTube and you normally watch this and you're like, where is she? So I'm in a different room in my house right now. And it's because this room I love. You can see it gets a ton of natural light, but also it has a really big window that looks out over this water that I live on. And it just feels really good today. This is the room I come into at night when I want to like meditate, because the moon and the stars are always like lined up directly in front of this window. So like it's nice to just like, and the sunset's on this side. So it's nice to watch the sunset, meditate and relax. But yeah, which we're going to get into that in a second. We're going to talk about the full moon because that has been going on, but we're also going to talk about when you're doing everything right and nothing is working. And this is going to apply to weight loss when you're doing all the right things, but the weight just won't come off. Your money status, your financial status, when you're doing everything you can, but like your financial situation hasn't changed. Your relationship status, when you're doing everything to try and find the right person, meet the right person, but nothing you do seems to be working. So we're going to talk all about that. When you are doing all the right things and nothing seems to be working, what do you do? Before we get into this, though, it is a full moon today. So I do want to address that because you guys know I'm a little bit of like not a hippie, but a little bit. I'm like a purist slash hippie slash gym rat slash animal lover and a lot of different things. So full moons typically when they come up, I don't care whether you believe in this stuff or not, you feel it. Like it's not something I'm making up. It's not something you have to even believe me. You have evidence of this in your own life. When full moons happen, it brings a lot of emotions that we are suppressing or not dealing with to the surface. So this full moon, it is April 5th right now, started yesterday, April 4th, and peaks around April 6th. So everybody has different experiences and how full moons affect them. Some people feel super exhausted and tired and emotional and just like, God, I just don't have the energy today. Other people feel like anxious. They're both kind of manifesting themselves for the same reason, because either you're getting exhausted and not having the energy because you've been so busy and on the go that you need to address the emotions that you have been running from with your busyness, or you have so much anxiety and restlessness because you've been sitting around and not doing what you need to do to move forward with your life or change your life. Either way, it depends on where you are. So if you're feeling super exhausted and super tired, it means you need to physically rest so that you can go within and address the emotions that are going on. If you are feeling a ton of anxiety, it means like, all right, it's time to like get things done, take action, start moving forward with your life. So who doesn't love a good full moon? Actually, I didn't even see this. Like in the corner there, I have a lunar calendar. So yeah, I always love a good full moon. It just feels, for me, full moons typically feel like a big emotional cleanse and a letting go. So this morning, like somebody asked me if I do any full moon rituals. Yes and no. I can feel it. I can feel when we have a full moon coming up. And like normally I'll look it up and I'm like, oh, yep, makes sense. My sleep has been super restless. I have felt more tired than normal. And I suddenly feel the need to like clean out my closet or deep clean all these things. And it's more just an emotional process that's manifesting itself physically. But when the full moon passes, I love it because it just feels like this like release and this letting go. So we do have a full moon right now. I say that because I got some messages from some of you on Instagram. You were talking about you're just like dealing with a lot of stuff, letting you feel like you're finally letting go of a lot of things. And I said, well, that's perfect because we do have a full moon right now that's supporting all of that. And there were questions behind like, what is this full moon? What does it mean? I mean, it doesn't really matter what it means. It's more just an opportunity for you to address what's going on in your life emotionally, release what needs to be released, your mental blocks, your emotional blocks, whatever that is, and then let go of what is no longer serving you so that you can make space and remain open to what is trying to come in for you. This particular full moon is in Libra. Shout out to all my Libras out there. So if you are also a Libra, you get a little extra luck and charm this month. So yeah, that is where we are at today. Thank you to all of you who sent me messages on Instagram and in emails asking me. It is so funny because it's not like I feel like all of y'all show up at the same time asking about podcast episodes. It doesn't happen like here and there. It's like within the same day, I'll get like 5 messages of like, hey, is everything okay? I haven't got the podcast episode, or like, hey, when's the next podcast episode coming out? I haven't seen. Is my subscription not working? Or like I'm like, you guys are so funny. I love it though. I love all the love. So thank you for asking and checking in. So the podcast, I have actually been on some other people's podcasts recently who have asked me to guest on there. So the time that I would normally be spending on this with you guys, I allotted to do a couple of those. And if you're interested in any of those, I will share them on Instagram. If you are not connected with me yet on Instagram, it's just at Ashley Drummond. It's my name. You can head over there. I don't do a ton of social media, but I do share things as new episodes come out and if I'm on anybody else's episode. So that is where I have been. I am sorry that I have been MIA. Thank you for loving me so much. Thank you for checking in on it. And yeah, I'm super excited to get into today's podcast episode. All right. So on that note, I got my notes here. They're not really notes. Honestly, this is just a little index card with 3 bullet points on it that I want to make sure I touch on because of some conversations I've had with people this week. So that's what we're going to get into. So what do you do when you're doing all the right things and nothing seems to be working? And this is such an interesting and fascinating topic. And part of what sparked me wanting to talk about this is a couple days ago, I went into the gym and I was talking to somebody that was up front and I was just like, hey, I'm just curious, like, are you into like metaphysics, vibrations, energies in the body, etc.? And this particular person was like, I mean, I don't really know what you mean, but no, not really. Like, explain. And I was like, oh, like everything holds a vibration. Our emotions are stored inside of our body. Like, we have energy systems and chakras and all that in our body. And this person was like, no, not really. Like, I'm not really into that. I was like, oh, really? Interesting. Like, that's so interesting to me. And like, just because like I love it. Like, I love learning all about like just the body is so fascinating into how it really is a house for all of our emotional experiences. So I was telling this person, I was like, well, here's what I mean. Like, what do you have anything that's been like chronically going on physically? And he was like, well, yeah, I've got this thing on like my left shoulder. I've got this left glute, this left hamstring, like, and something else on the left side. And I was like, okay, you ready for this? And I was explaining to him, I was like, so your left side it's not really masculine or feminine. but kind of. So your left side is all like your softer side. It's where you receive energy, it's where you allow energy to come in. It's our relationships, it's where we love. It's our heart energy is how I can describe it. And our right side is like our I don't want to call it strength. Um kind of masculine. It's the get shit done side. It's how we give energy. It's our power. It's like where we hold like our power and our strength. So we'll call it that, like empowerment, motivation, all those things. So this person having all these things on the left side, I was like, okay, so typically what that represents is you're really good at taking care of other people and showing up for other people, and you give a lot, and you're very focused and driven and determined because your right side is good, it's in alignment. So you're really good at that, and like you're like a powerhouse, kind of like you can take care of everything and everyone, but you've got so many things going on the left side. A few things seem to be going on. Is one, you are not allowing anybody to also give and show up for you. So, first question, do you have anybody in your life that feeds you? And he was like, I was like, it's okay. Like, I'm not like judging anything. I'm trying to help. So I was like, do you have anybody in your life that feeds you like emotionally and like nurtures you? And he was like, no, not really. I was like, okay, that's okay. Like, that's kind of just what that indicates. But then also, it usually means you have a block and a resistance to love. So something must have happened to you emotionally in the realm of heartbreak, heart stuff, like a big relationship or big love that's kind of, you've got that blocked. You're not really in a place that you're opening that back up. You want it, but you're not really willing to open that back up to let somebody else in and to re-experience that. And he kind of just like looked at me and he was like, this is getting personal. Geez. And like walked away. And I was like, I mean, am I right though? And he's like, you literally just read more about me in like 5 minutes from that than I think most people know about me. I'm like, well, it's not, it's the body. But so the reason I want to talk about this is because it then like other people were around and they were like, ooh, do me, tell me what's going on. And like one girl was having this like constant issue in like her neck and her traps. And she's like, so what is this? And I was like, oh God, that usually indicates like there's somebody that's really irritating you and you're not letting go of it. And so like it's like always in your neck because it's that like you're hanging on to it, or him or her or whatever, like you have to let it go. And they were like, oh my God, there's like three guys I'm talking to right now. But okay, so this one that I wanted to talk about was a couple days later. One of the ladies had come up to me and she was like, hey, I want you to do me, like read me. I was like, okay, well, you kind of have to tell me what's going on physically. And she's like, I can't, no matter what I do, I can't lose weight. I'm not sleeping super great. My sleep is really off. Um, and I'm just feeling like super restless. And she's like, I was like, okay, so I'm assuming you're probably doing, like, when you say that, like, you can't lose the weight, you're probably doing all the right things, like the basics in the beginning. Like, you're probably eating pretty healthy and you're probably exercising regularly. She was like, yeah, that's what's frustrating me is no matter what I try, can't get the weight off. And I've got like terrible sleep right now. And like the second time she said it, I felt it like right in my chest. And sometimes, like, that's usually how I can figure things. Like, I kind of like feel something. I don't really know how to explain it. And I like put my hand on my heart. I was like, I'm going to tell you what it is. And I'm pretty confident that this is what it is. And all I want to say is, I'm sorry that it's right. And she, like, her eyes started watering up and she's like, okay. I was like, so normally when people are doing all the right things in regards to like when it comes to weight loss and things like that, and the weight is staying on and they're just annoyed because they feel so like heavy, um, they feel uncomfortable in their body, they just can't seem to get rid of this extra weight. I was like, it usually 9 times out of 10 is very heavy sadness, grief, disappointment, pain, all these things that you're not acknowledging and letting go of. So what happens is we literally hold on to weight almost as like a protection, a protective little layer around us, but also it's the heaviness of these emotions translates into heaviness of weight on our bodies. And then when it comes to sleep stuff, anytime somebody tells me those two things, like I'm not sleeping great and no matter what I do, I can't get the weight off. Even now, like I can feel it. It's almost always some level of grief, loss, sadness, disappointment that you are not letting yourself acknowledge. And it is showing up physically as just super stubborn weight. And then it shows up at night because at night is when our conscious mind, so that's like our busy mind that keeps us busy, it's doing things all day long. It's when our busy mind checks out, which is when we should be falling asleep. But the subconscious then gets activated. And in our subconscious is our deepest thoughts, emotions, and feelings. So when you start having issues with falling asleep, that's usually what it is. And when I said that, this woman, like, she started crying and tearing up, and she's like, it's 100% spot on. And she's got all this stuff going on in regards to like her personal life that I'm not going to get into because that is hers. But so I wanted to talk about this. And because what I was telling all of these individual people, I was like, it's not the body and life doesn't just all of a sudden go out of alignment and like now you're just stuck. What happens though is we tend to look to the surface of everything because it's easier. It's easier, and we're looking for a faster response than if we were to actually let go of the external and go within. So we'll talk about all of this in different areas, but like the ones that come up the most, and especially this last week that I keep having with people, is people feeling so frustrated because they're like, I've been trying everything and I've done what every single person tells me to do. And no matter what I do, nothing is working. Like I just can't get the weight off, or I just cannot break through in this area. And it's always so fascinating because I'm I've done this too. We all do this, but it's always so fascinating because when we're in it, we can't see it because we're just seeing the surface. We're just looking at like the top layer when in reality, it's what's beneath that layer that is dictating all of your actions and behavior. So how we think dictates how we act, which then dictates our reality. Perfect example of this is self-sabotage. So think about this in terms of a relationship. If somebody is constantly thinking, my partner's going to cheat on me, like I'm so scared my partner's going to cheat on me, I don't think they really love me, I don't think they want to be with me, even though nothing in their actual reality has given them a reason to think that. It could just be like past experiences of that, it could be childhood trauma, who knows. But regardless, when you have these thoughts and these fears all the time, you're always worried and paranoid your partner is going to cheat on you. I've been cheated on before. You, with those thoughts, start to behave differently. You start asking weird questions like, why didn't you answer your phone yesterday? What were you doing yesterday? You start changing the way that you act because you're acting as if your partner is going to cheat on you. And what that does is pushes your partner further and further away. End result, your partner may or may not cheat on you. Maybe they'll leave you. I don't really know. But we come back to it. And I'm not saying that if somebody cheats on you, it's your fault. But what I am saying is an example of how we can self sabotage things based on our thinking. Same thing if you end up getting this really great job offer, you're getting paid like so much money and the work is like stupid easy. You have insecurities and thoughts of not being good enough. I don't deserve this. I am unqualified. You therefore start acting in a way to reflect those thoughts. You start slacking off a little bit because you're so worried and scared. You start getting paranoid. You start like going out the night before drinking and then showing up to meetings hungover where you can't fully show up because deep down you don't really feel good enough Then, long story short, you end up getting fired, and it further validates this thought and belief in yourself. I'm not good enough. Round and round we go. So, my point in saying all that is that our thoughts dictate how we act and behave every single day, which then dictate our reality. How does all of this translate into I'm doing everything that I possibly can? Nothing is really working. So, with weight loss, this is not one layer. There's lots of layers to this. So, you may have to like pause, take notes, all those things. There's lots of layers to this, though. So, with weight loss, obviously, layer number one is the one on the surface. Are you eating the right nutrition? Are you exercising regularly? It's that simple. More than likely, you probably are. Okay, so we can check that. Let's go one layer deeper. When did all of this, you can't, if you're not watching this, you can't see the air quotes, stuckness start happening for you? Stuckness, and if it's not weight loss, apply wherever it needs to be applied. When did you feel stuck in your job? When did you feel stuck in your relationship? When did you feel stuck in your friendship? Stuck in this, stuck in that? When did that start? Year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4, 5, 6, 7. Just, you can write this down. When did that start for you? Okay. So you're doing all the right things on the surface. Like, yeah, on paper, you're doing all the right things. So then it's not that. There's something going on underneath that. So you look and you're like, okay, it started 3 years ago. Okay, cool. Congratulations. We figured out a timeline. So now let's go one layer beneath that. It started 3 years ago. What happened to you 3 years ago? What big emotional event or experience happened to you 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 6 months, 5 years, or whatever timeline that you started feeling stuck in this one particular area? It can be anything. Maybe you started a new job. Maybe you quit an old job. Maybe you lost a friendship. Maybe you moved. Maybe you experienced the death of a loved one. Maybe you were going through like some significant change that created an emotion. It's something emotional. So, this is the work that I can't do for you because I don't know your entire life journey. This is the work you have to do for yourself. What happened when you started to experience the stuckness? What stress, big life change, transition, or emotional thing happened? That can be the layer right there. Normally, people will be able to pinpoint something that was going on during that time in their life where they never fully felt the emotions around that. And that is what they're holding on to. That is what is causing the stuckness. So, like, I had a client, and she's probably listening to this. I had a client a couple years ago who hadn't dealt with grief. So grief manifests like everything we just talked about. I've had a client who, when we like put on the timeline of when did all this start, that you started gaining weight and you kind of just like let yourself go. And it had been like a couple years prior when her marriage was basically over, but she stayed in it and she had lost one of her best friends. So the way she soothed herself and what the way a lot of people soothe themselves is by holding on to this protective weight. Sometimes it can manifest as like binge eating, overeating. Sometimes it's just literally like those stubborn pounds that your body won't let go of. Same thing happens in everything else. And I won't keep going through this, but just take it and apply it wherever in your life this would be coming up and the situation it's referring to that you just feel like is a brick wall that you can't break through. So going back, like, what is it? Can you identify a timeline and something emotional during that timeline that was happening that you have not totally let yourself feel? So we have those layers. We then have another layer of like, okay, now we got to talk about why you haven't let yourself feel that. Why are you holding on to it? Why are you denying yourself the experience? And it's pretty, that part is pretty, I mean, we're all humans, we're all the same. Most of that stems from fear. I'm scared. And like this woman the other day, when she was telling me about like the weight gain and the sleep issues and all that. I said, why are you not? I said, what are you doing to let yourself feel this? And she's like, I'm not. I said, why? And she's like, well, because I feel like it means I'm weak. I'm afraid that if I let myself totally let go and fall apart and experience the pain and the loss and all these things, it means I'm weak. So that's the next layer we have to get to is these emotions, why you're not feeling them. You have to identify what the belief is that's keeping you from feeling those things. And like, it's so interesting. Even when I worked with people who they self sabotage their own success. And like, it doesn't make sense. And when I brought it up, like some people fear success. They say they want financial wealth and independence and to be super successful in all these things. And on paper, they're doing all the right things. They're putting in the work, they're meditating, they're visualizing, and nothing is budging. So then we have to go to all these layers, and it's like, all right, well, you're doing everything right on these layers. I want to know if you have a belief that you may not even be consciously aware of that is blocking this for you. And it always, there's like immediate pushback of like, I'm not blocking success, or like, I'm not blocking love. Like, I want the love of my life, or like, I'm not blocking weight loss. I want to look good. I want to feel good. And I'm like, you'd be surprised though, when we start getting into this, why you may be blocking it without even realizing it. And almost every single time it goes back to the emotional component. So some people block success because of what it would mean if they let go of the story of failure. Why would you hold on to the story of failure? Well, because positive or negative, you gain something from every experience that you are holding on to. Good or bad, it doesn't matter. So if you're always the failure and you're always the one struggling, maybe you get a little extra attention from family, from friends. They always feel bad for you. Positive or negative, it's still attention. And maybe that is how you have learned to get attention, by always being in a struggle and needing people's attention and help. So the idea of letting go of failure and no longer struggling and being success, there is a very deep subconscious belief behind that of, but if I'm successful, what is going to happen with all these relationships? It's a fear of a loss of identity. Same thing is true when it comes to weight loss. There's fear behind not only the emotional experience, but what does that emotional experience mean about you? And if you are no longer the person who is overweight, struggling with that weight loss, if you no longer have that story, then what? Your whole life changes. Like, people don't realize when you make these small changes, weight loss, money, relationships, success, you have a bit of an identity shift. You cannot have one or the other. When you get married, part of your identity changes. You are no longer that person anymore. When you get divorced, when you have a breakup, when you now are somebody who can take care of yourself financially and you're successful, there's a different identity with that. Like, there's so many different things we go through. So if in a specific situation like this with the weight loss and this woman and a couple other people who have been talking to me about how frustrated they are with the weight loss, and you're doing all the right things, you're eating all the right foods, you're exercising regularly. You might see Bear in the background. He's freaking out because my dryer is sounds like somebody's beating down the door. I'm doing my linens today. But anyways, if you're going through all of this and nothing's working, ask yourself, what resistance do you have behind this? You can't, like, everybody wants everything to be external. Just tell me the external work. Tell me a supplement that I can take. Tell me a magic nutrition plan I can eat. Is it keto? Is keto the best way? Is it paleo? Is it whole 30? Is there some, maybe you think maybe I'm like deficient in this, you think my metabolism this, and it's like, those are all the surface things, but that's what everybody wants because that is less scary. Maybe I need a new job. Maybe that's what I need. Maybe that'll propel my success. Maybe I need a new relationship. That'll create the love that I want. It's like, Listen, you're going to exhaust yourself running in circles doing this until you deal with a deeper issue that is going on. If you are stuck, whatever your physical thing is, whatever your financial thing is, your relational thing is, if you are stuck, I can guarantee you it's not because you're not doing enough on the outside. It's because you are running from what is on the inside. Are you depressed? And I'm not talking like depressed, like, and maybe you are. I'm not talking like you're depressed, like you don't see anybody, you don't get out of bed for weeks. Like, I'm talking about like a mindset of maybe you're depressed about your job. Maybe you hate going to work every day and you're not really acknowledging it. You just keep pushing it off. Maybe you're depressed in your relationship, but you keep pushing it off because it's easier for you to push it off than to acknowledge and feel the pain of emptiness of being in your relationship. Maybe you're depressed because you lost a loved one. Maybe you're depressed because you know the work you're doing is unfulfilling. Maybe it's not depression. Maybe you're just sad and dealing with grief and disappointment because of something that happened that you aren't totally acknowledging. Like, there's so many things around this. All of it, though, requires you to fully show up and be present to the emotional experience that you are having internally. And the reason this is so important is because once you take care of those deep layers, everything else is just like domino effect. Now, all of a sudden, you stop trying, weight starts coming off, things start moving again. All of a sudden, things start lining up with work. All of a sudden, the universe takes care of your relationships. Either the ones you need to let go of just kind of disappear, or like the opportunity presents itself for you to let go. Like, you, when you do, and this is like the biggest message I can get across. Like, I wish I was telling somebody the other day, I don't remember why we were talking about this, but we got on the whole concept of like fitness, nutrition, subconscious programming. And I was explaining to them, I was like, I wish when people came in for a fitness consultation or a nutrition consultation, like, I wish the protocol across the world was, instead of like, okay, let's start you out with like these exercises for 3 or 4 times a week. Let's just have you eat this. Like, instead of that, I wish the protocol was, okay, for the next 30 days, what I want you to do every day and every night before you start your morning, just like 15, 20 minutes, I want you to get in a room by yourself and I want you to just sit in silence. That's it. 10, 15 minutes in the morning, 10, 15 minutes at night. I want you to just sit in silence and I want you to observe what comes up. And that was like your starting regimen. Like, that's how we start your whole transformation program, is do that for 10, 15 minutes. Then after 30 days, every single week, like, yeah, we'll talk about what was coming up. Then after 30 days, you'll keep doing that. And then we'll start talking about some food. Then we'll start talking about your exercise. Nobody does that though. And the reason why nobody does that is because nobody wants to do that. If you came to me, if I started everybody with that, people would quit after 3 days because they're like, this is so stupid. Why does she have me sitting in a room by myself for 10 to 15 minutes when what I'm trying to do is lose weight and get in shape? Well, the reason I'm having you do that is because the stuff that we really need to help you lose weight and get in shape, the only way you're going to find it is in yourself. I can be your guide and I can give you the right nutrition plan and I can give you the right exercise program. But the real work is what happens underneath. And this is why you always see people jumping from one thing to the next. They go from one coach to the next coach. They go from one diet to the next diet. They go from one partner to another partner. They're never alone. They're always jumping to the next thing and they will always do this, continuing to feel more and more dissatisfied and frustrated until they stop all of that and they sit with the common denominator in everything, which is you. You are the thing that is in every single one of the experiences that you are having in your job, in your relationship, in your health and fitness, in your friendship. And until you sit with you and take a look at what is going on inside and you acknowledge the emotional experiences that you are having inside, you're going to continue being on this rat race and this hamster wheel feeling frustrated over and over and over again. Why do I always get cheated on? Why can't I find a job that I really love? Why can't I find work that's super fulfilling? Why can't I lose weight even though I've tried 40 million coaches? Why can't I seem to put on lean muscle? Why can't I find like great friends? I don't know. Have you asked yourself that? Have you done the work? I'm not trying to be insensitive. I'm actually extremely sensitive to this, which is why I'm doing this whole podcast episode, because I want you to be super happy and healthy and to have all of the wonderful experiences that you and I and every single human being deserves. In order to do that, though, this is what is required of you. This is the work that you have to do and that you've probably been avoiding, because this is the stuff that's not fun. This is the shit that is not fun, which is why nobody wants to do it. I believe everybody should go to therapy. Everybody. Even if you don't think you have issues, go to therapy. Why? Because you're going to start to uncover the stuff that really matters, and you're going to realize the things that you were putting this big emphasis on externally is totally irrelevant. It's actually really funny. The other day, I was talking to a good friend of mine, and I realized we've been friends for years. And I realized, like, I didn't even know the name of her work, like where she worked. I didn't even know, like, I don't know, something super basic. Like, I didn't even know, like, I couldn't tell you one of her coworkers' names. And I was thinking about it, and I was then thinking about like all of my relationships. And that's pretty, well, I'm not going to say all of my relationships, my very close relationships. That's a pretty consistent theme. And it's not because I don't deeply care and we're not deeply connected, but it's because all the conversations that I have with the people that I'm close with in my life, it's almost never about the surface stuff. Like, we're never talking about work or talking about, like, I don't know, the surface level stuff. Like, most of our conversations are about, like, oh, I had this dream last night, or like, what are you manifesting? What are you letting go of? What are you working on right now? What are your dreams? What are your inspirations? Like, what are your biggest hopes right now? What fears and blocks are you working through? And so in Tampa, I coach a weightlifting class. It's for fun. I love it. It's just fun hanging out with people and lifting weights. But so afterwards, he's probably listening to this. There was somebody that had found the podcast after coming to my weightlifting class, and I was teaching him, and I'm always very hesitant and very sensitive to like people who I feel like are open to these kind of conversations, and those who, like, I can feel the resistance that even if I like tell you like, hey, do this, you're not ready to hear that. What you want is like the surface thing. But so I can't even remember what our workout was. It might have been snatches or handstands or something. But yeah, actually, overhead squats. I remember now. Thank you. Overhead squats. He wasn't able to get fully locked out in the overhead position. If you're listening, friend, I just appreciate that, like, you were open to these conversations. But so he couldn't fully get locked out. And I was noticing, and I said, hey, when we're done, I'll show you some exercises you can do to open your chest up and to be able to fully lock out in an overhead position, because that it's not the weight problem. It's you're not being able to open up all the way. And so we had walked over, and I was showing him some exercises against the wall you can do to really open up your chest, open up your lats. And he's doing it, and he was like, oh, I know, I'm like blocked in my heart chakra. And I kind of just like gave him a look of like, wait, what? You speak my language? He was like, I listened to your podcast. I found your podcast, and like, I think the same way. And so I really like it. But yeah, he's like, I know my chest is tight. My heart chakra has been super closed off. So I know I need to work on that. But like, my whole point and all that, I was like, yes, like, thank you. Like, I love that you get that. And so we ended up talking all about like the body and like vibrations and energies. And he's a chiropractor. So like a lot of chiropractors have to learn this stuff too and speak the same language. But all that to say, like, it just made me think about the fact, like, most of the friends that I communicate with, like, this is what we talk about. We're not talking about like the drama or gossip at work or somebody's annoying us or coworkers, or because who cares? Because the truth is, none of that stuff matters. What matters is like what's going on inside of you. So to wrap all this up, I know we've like gone through a lot right now. And if this is your first time, hi, welcome. I'm Ashley Drummond. This is what most episodes are like. This is what we're going to get into. But to wrap all of this up, when you are experiencing what feels like resistance or blocks or stuckness in anything, take a step back, ask yourself, what emotions am I not letting myself feel? And if you have a hard time identifying what that emotion is, identify first the timeline when you started feeling stuck in this area and see what was going on during that time. What were you experiencing during that time that is still being part of your experience now by holding itself in whatever area this is? Then once you get that, you have to do the work to allow yourself to let go of those emotional experiences and process and acknowledge them. And there's so many ways that you can do this. And even like this woman that I started this whole thing with the example of, when she was telling me about her, she can't lose the weight and she's having sleep issues. She was like, so what do I do about that? I was like, you need to consistently over and over again, as you're going through these personal experiences, make sure you are allowing room and space and time to feel everything that you're feeling. If you gotta scream in your pillow, if you gotta go to the batting cages every single day, if you have to cry in your car every single day while driving to work, if you gotta like run 20 miles a day, like whatever you have to do to process the emotions out of your body, that is what you need to do through this entire experience. And because she asked, she was like, well, how do I know when it's done? I'm like, you'll know. You just know. When it's done, you're like, I don't think I can cry anymore. I think that's it. Like, I think I did all the crying that I can do. And now I'm ready to let that go. You just know. Sometimes it takes longer than we expect, though. But I mean, like, every time somebody tells me they're stuck, my heart, I'm just like, oh, there's something you're not feeling. There's something you're not letting go of. There's some emotional experience that you just feel like, God, I can't totally like let myself acknowledge this because of what it would mean about me, of like, I'm weak, I'm vulnerable, I'm too much, not enough, whatever. And worrying about who you are without that story. Because seriously, like, what are you going to do if you don't have that struggle to talk about anymore? What are you going to talk about? Who are you then? So just kind of think about those things. Yeah, I think that's enough. I was like checking in with myself for a second. Like, is there more I want to touch on with this? Yeah. When you're doing everything right and nothing seems to be working, stop doing everything externally and go internally and ask yourself, is it possible there is something in me resisting this or blocking this, even though I say this is what I really want? You know, just think about that. Little food for thought for you. All right. That is today's podcast episode. Ooh, I will try my best to get these out every single week for you. It should be better now. I don't have any as far as, well, I'm not going to say that because I don't really know. I will do my best to get these out every single week for you. I appreciate so much you guys who sent me messages that were really like, hey, where's my podcast episode? It's been a couple weeks. Is everything okay? Everything is wonderful. I am doing wonderful. Thank you for checking in. If you have not subscribed, subscribe to this podcast. I will bring more and more stuff out to help inspire and empower you to be your best self. And if you haven't connected with me on Instagram, head on over at Ashley Drummonds, because I always love when you guys screenshot and share the podcast episode to let me know that you're listening. All right, that's it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you have a wonderful week, and I will see you on the next Phoenix Rising episode. See ya.